Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Hannah if you're new here, and welcome to the end of July and my July reading wrap up. Now, I'm going to be doing a video that I originally saw on TikTok where the premise of the video is buy, borrow, or skip. I thought this was a fun concept, a way to get through the 20 plus books I have to talk about relatively quickly. So I'm going to be giving you the star rating, a tiny little summary, and whether I would recommend buying the book, borrowing the book from the library or a friend, or skipping the book altogether. So let's get started. First, I have to talk about Summerween. I participated in a Halloween spooky book inspired readathon where I was reading spooky books for a week, and that vlog is linked above. But in that vlog, I read two books, one being House of Leaves, and spoiler alert, this was a 1-star book, and I think you can skip it, in my opinion. And the other book I read was City of Nightmares by Rebecca Schaefer, and I thought this was fun, and I actually would recommend borrowing this from the library. I thought it was a fun, young adult fantasy. Another book I'm going to quickly touch on is Gear Breakers by Zoe Hana Mikuta. Now, this is my sister's book club book, so spoiler warning for my siblings if you choose to watch this video. This was a 3-star, young adult sci-fi dystopian, enemies to lovers, sapphic edition, and I would borrow this one personally. And I'm going to save further thoughts and feelings on this book in particular for my sister's book club that I do in person. We got a couple of manga to talk about, the first being volume 1 of My Brother's Husband by Gengoro Tagame. Now, I gave this is a contemporary literary fiction manga. This man whose brother passes away, and his brother's husband, who is originally from Canada, comes to Japan to visit the main character and the main character's daughter, and the three of them bond. And I thought this was okay. I gave this a 3-star. I think it has some good cozy vibes, and unfortunately I would say borrow this one just because for me, the external homophobia that happens in this book just wasn't really fun to read about. The other manga I read is Spy Family Volume 1 by Tetsuyo Endo. I gave this 5 stars. This is such a fun, fast-paced, goofy family dynamic where the dad is the pretend father is a spy, the pretend mother is an assassin, and the daughter is telepathic, and later in the series they get a dog who can see the future. And it was fantastic. I love this. I love the manga. I love the anime. 5 stars. I would totally buy this series. All right, I did it. I did read Silvia Moreno Garcia's latest release, Silver Nitrate, which is a thriller, historical thriller set in the 90s about two best friends who get wrapped up with this mysterious cult classic director, and they start getting haunted by the film that they're trying to complete for him. I gave this a 3 stars, and I would borrow this from the library, and I'm really sad about it. Let's dive into romance. I have so many romance books I read this month. Let's start with The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy by Megan Bannon. I gave this 2 stars. This is a fantasy romance, and I didn't particularly like the execution of this overall, and I think you can skip it, to be honest. Then we have Sweet Hand by N.G. Peltier. Now, this is a contemporary romance set in Trinidad. This is like kind of enemies to rivals to lovers. They've been their families have been friends for years, so they've known each other since childhood, and they eventually have a romance. And I gave this 3 stars. I thought this was pretty good. I just don't think this has a lot of lasting power, so I would definitely borrow this one if you're interested in this. I can't believe I have to talk about this and not give very much nuance to it, but I read Lord of Scoundrels by Loretta Chase, which is a very famous historical romance, and I ate that up. I hate the fact that I loved this. as much as I did. This is a historical romance and the guy is kind of an asshole. And so typically I don't like those types of romances, but this one really worked for me. And I'm giving it a 4.25 out of 5 stars. If you want all of my thoughts and feelings on this one, I have a lot to say. I will make a separate video if those of you who are interested want to know why this one is so wild and such a divisive and controversial, almost 5-star from me. And I honestly, for everyone else, I think you should borrow it because I feel like this is not universally lovable or likable even, but for me, I kind of want to buy it. And I'll leave it at that. I read so many Talia Hibbert books. Talia Hibbert gets her own dedicated section in this video. So I realized I hadn't made my way through Talia Hibbert's backlist yet, so I went and I read everything of hers I haven't read yet, which is like 7 or 8 books. So let's go. I started off with her Ravenswood series, which is a small town romance, contemporary romance series, the first one being A Girl Like Her. And I really like this. I gave this a 4-star. I believe I gave this one 4 stars. This was a great romance, really great introduction to this small town world, and I gave this 4 stars. I think you should buy this one. Damaged Goods is the next book in the series, which is kind of like a spin-off novella, which happens between book 1 and 2. And I also really liked this one. I gave it a 3.75 stars. This is a second chance romance, and I really enjoyed it. And it is super steamy too. And I think you should also buy this one. The second full-length novel in the series is called Untouchable, and I DNF'd this book at 25% because I couldn't stand our female protagonist, our hero of the story. I could not stand being in her head. I didn't like her in book 1 when she was a side character, and I couldn't stand her in book 2 as a character on her own. Just not a kind of main character I'm interested in exploring. So I would say borrow it for everyone else. For me, it's a skip. Book 3 in this series is called That Kind of Guy, and I ended up giving this one 3.5 out of 5 stars. Still a really solid romance. This is kind of an age gap where the female main character is older than our male protagonist, and we have some demisexual representation, which is awesome. I don't think I've ever read a book specifically with someone who is demisexual, so that was really great representation. A lot of discussions of consent and sexuality in this book in particular, which I think is super great. And I would honestly say buy this one too. Round out your collection of Talia Hibbert. Then I went on to read her Just for Him series, which is a series of contemporary romances that have more intense themes and plot lines, and they also typically have a main male protagonist who is like a millionaire or a billionaire, and our female leading lady is just like a regular, normal, working class woman. And the first book in this series, Bad for the Boss, this is a 5-star romance. I'm slightly embarrassed about this one, but no nuance in this video whatsoever. I ate this up. This was so fun. This is an age gap, workplace romance, employee, employer romance with a stalker plotline. The stalker is not the main love interest, by the way. Very intense, surprisingly emotional, and very smutty. I personally would buy this one. I think for everyone else, you should probably borrow it though, because like some of those dynamics may not work for you. The second book in this series, Undone by the Ex-Con, is kind of like a bad first impression, enemies to lovers, and I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I thought this one was pretty good, not my favorite, but it was interesting to read this one because the main female protagonist, Lizzie, in this book is the sibling to another character in work for it, which is one of my favorite Talia Hibbert romances. So it's kind of interesting to get more backstory on Olu, is his name, that character from that book in this book, if that makes sense. And I would probably borrow this one. I feel like maybe this one has more general appeal, but it still does have those more intense themes. There's a blackmailing plot line, and that gets pretty disgusting. So just, you know, take care of yourself with this series in particular. Maybe borrow these first. The last book in this series is called Sweet on the Greek, which is a fake dating plot line, and I really liked it. Also kind of an opposites attract plot line, and I also really enjoyed this one. I gave this one 4 stars, and I think you should probably borrow this one, but for me, I'm gonna buy it. Add to cart. The last Talia Hibbert book that I even have access to at my library is Mating the Huntress. And this is a monster romance with a werewolf and a werewolf huntress, fated mates situation. So if anyone is gonna convince me to read a monster romance or get behind a fated mates trope, it's gonna be Talia Hibbert, and she does a pretty good job. I just don't think I'm set up to, I really don't like fated mates and like that whole dynamic in a romance, so I wasn't set up to love this one, but I still gave this one 3 stars overall. I think this is a fun novella, very Halloween vibes, and so I think y'all should borrow it. I might borrow it. I don't think I'm gonna get myself a copy, but definitely a borrow. Next, we're moving on to all the fantasy I read, and sadly, we gotta start off with kind of a Debbie Downer. That is The Oathbound by Mercedes Lackey, which is book 1 in the Vows of Honor series. This is in the Valdemar extended universe, and unfortunately, this is a 2-star. I'm pretty disappointed in this. This is essentially a collection of stories, short stories that were slumped together and packaged as a novel, and it really doesn't work as a contiguous narrative. And there is so much R-word, lots of grape in this book, and it was super uncomfortable. And after looking up some reviews for this, Mercedes Lackey is maybe not an author I should continue to support on this channel, so I'm taking a pause from reading Valdemar for a little bit until I figure out exactly what I want to do. But this is a skip. This was a pretty big disappointment for me. Another disappointment is The Ruin of Kings by Jen Lyons. I read 65% of this book before deciding to DNF it. This is an adult epic fantasy with 2 storylines following the same main character, Kieran. One is told from Kieran's perspective, and one is told from a different perspective, and I won't give it away who that is. And I was only interested in one of the perspectives, and by the time I got 65% in, I was dreading picking this book up, and I wasn't excited to continue reading, so I DNF'd it, and this is a skip for me. But I hope y'all enjoy this. This is a completed 5-book series, and I wanted to love it, but I just didn't. So this is a skip for me personally, but maybe if that sounds interesting, you should borrow it. Next, we have Untethered Sky by Fonda Lee, who is the author of the Greenbone Saga, which I absolutely adored. This is a standalone revenge fantasy standalone about this woman who becomes a rook trainer, which are these giant birds that are used to hunt down manticores, and that's the whole story. The whole story is her learning how to, training her giant bird, hunting the manticores, and that's kind of the only thing going for this story. And so I give this 3 stars in a good way. Like, this is really well written and well executed, but it just doesn't have a lot of staying power for me personally. So I would recommend borrowing this one if that sounds like an interesting premise for you. Speaking of Fonda Lee, I also read The Jade Setter of John Loon by Fonda Lee, which is a prequel novella set in the Greenbone Saga universe, and this was so fun to read. This I gave a 4 stars. It was so fun to be back in this world, seeing some familiar characters and reading this kind of standalone story. And I think you should buy this one, honestly. I think if you're already a fan of the Greenbone Saga, you would also love this novella. Buy if you're a fan already, borrow if you're interested in maybe dipping your toes before committing to a very long series. Next we have Yumi and the Nightmare Painter by Brandon Sanderson, and it's really hard to capture this book on camera because it's so foily. And I gave this a 4.25. This is an adult fantasy standalone set in Brandon Sanderson's expanded Cosmere universe. And I really enjoyed my time reading this. I think this is a borrow, personally, but I'm glad I have my own beautiful special edition Kickstarter copy of this book. I think it's gorgeous, and I really did have a good time reading it. Next we have 10,000 Stitches by Olivia Atwater. This is the second book in her Regency fairy tale romance series, and I loved this book. I gave this also a 4.25, and I would recommend buying it. That's maybe a little controversial. A lot of people preferred book 1, which is Half a Soul, but I think I just had such a delightful time with 10,000 Stitches. It is a very sweet, charming romance, and I just thought it was a lot of fun. It's very kind of a simple plot line, but I think it was executed really, really well. And I almost like it better than the first book. Don't come for me, but I really, really enjoyed this series, and I can't wait to read the next book. The last book we're going to talk about today is The Hunger of the Gods by John Gwynne, the second book in the Bloodsworn saga, and this was a 4.5 out of 5-star read. This is an epic Norse fantasy story, and I'm obsessed with it. I think John Gwynne is a masterful storyteller and writer, and the reason I'm giving it a 4.5 and not a full 5-star is because there were additional points of view added, and I don't particularly enjoy that element when authors start off with, you know, let's say 3 points of view in the first book, and then the second book has 5 or 6 points of view, so an additional 2 or 3, and I just think while it reveals more of the world and some insights into some of these other characters that are pretty important to the overall arc, I just think it's distracting, and I just want to spend more time with Orca, our favorite murder mommy. And can we talk, like, 1 second? That ending. Emotional damage, and I need book 3 right now. Yesterday. John Gwynne, why would you do that to me? This is a buy for me, obviously. I don't think everyone loves this sequel as much as book 1, but I think this was just as good as book 1, in my opinion. So I would buy this. Clearly, I bought it. Oof, that was a lot. Those are all the books I read in July. I read so much in July. It was kind of a problem. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the format of this video. I thought it was a lot of fun to film, and I hope that you have a great reading month in August. Let me know if you enjoyed this video. I had so much fun filming. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!